Hello and welcome to this recording of a discussion that we're going to have to celebrate International Women in Engineering Day. It's really wonderful to be here with two colleagues and stakeholders of ours, Lucy and Sharon, who I'll introduce in a minute. Just before I do that, my name is Naomi Green. I'm the Managing Director of England's Economic Heartland, one of the 7 subnational transport bodies across England. Women in Engineering Day takes place on June the 23rd. It's organised by the Women Engineering Society. It's an international campaign to raise the profile of women in engineering and draw attention to the fantastic career opportunities available to women and girls in this industry. Addressing skills shortages in our region is an important ambition of England's Economic Heartland and our partners. There's a huge opportunity to do this by attracting more women into the sector. There is a long way to go. Only 14% of all engineers are currently women. It's growing slowly, but at the moment, only 20% of physics students are female, and that's a statistic that hasn't changed over the past 25 years. There's an awful lot for us all to do to raise the profile of the sector and energise women and girls to join. I'm delighted to be joined by 2 very successful young women from our region who are working in transport. We're going to discuss what it's like to work in the engineering sector and what more can be done to attract women into engineering roles. Lucy Ellis is a section engineer for the East West Rail Alliance, working between Bicester and Bletchley. Having completed her A-levels at Silverstone UTC, she undertook a degree apprenticeship with Laing O'Rourke in civil and structural engineering, which she completed last year. She's a winner of the Young Rail Professional 2022 and also represents Laing O'Rourke on its Global Rail campaign. Sharon Francis is a principal transport planner based in the UK. Sharon holds a Bachelor of Technology in Civil Engineering from Mahatma Gandhi University in India and took an MSc Engineering in Transport Planning at the Institute for Transport Strategy at the University of Leeds. Sharon has experience across all disciplines of transport planning and specialises in strategy and policy creation. Sharon has managed projects with key public sector transport authorities such as the Department for Transport, Transport for the North, National Highways, and recently has come to work with England's Economic Heartland on some of our key projects. Over the past 3 years, Sharon's been undertaking research into inclusive transport appraisal and assessment, winning the award for Best Paper by a Young Professional in 2020 at the Transport Practitioners Meeting. If I start with you, Lucy, could you tell us why you wanted to become an engineer and how you set about doing it?
So I always wanted to be in a career that gave different challenges every single day. And to me, engineering was something that provided that. I guess I was surrounded by engineering my entire childhood. So my dad's an engineer, albeit an electrical engineer, and my grandfather is also in construction. So everything to do with growing up, and I grew up with a brother, was to do with challenges set around the house. And that really kind of sparked my creative side of wanting to think like that. My dad was incredible when I was younger, and I was really supported by the education systems that I was in gaining work experience. So I sent off to numerous STEM activities, both on residentials at Warwick University, or just days that got me involved in the general discipline of STEM. And that gave me a flavour for various different engineering practices, whether it be electrical, mechanical, civil. And civil was something I really I really wanted to be in. I loved the fact that you could look out of your window and see the changes that you were doing and the positive impact we were giving the communities. And so going through education, that kind of from age 14 was something I always wanted to do. In terms of getting into engineering, I applied to various apprenticeship schemes, which I guess is what I did in the end. I got a degree apprenticeship with Laing O'Rourke doing civil and structural engineering, and that just meant that once a week I went and did a degree for 5 years, and I also worked alongside it for those 5 years. So I graduated last year, and they just kept me on the project. So I've been on East West Rail for the last 6 years. I've seen it through kind of design, on-site construction, bits of handing over, and just moving through various job roles that have been available to me.
Well, that is absolutely fantastic to hear, and reinforces how within the Heartland region we've been able to grow our own engineers that are now absolutely delivering on core projects that are vital to our region. The other end of our scale is, of course, our role in global Britain. And in Sharon, we have a young lady who grew her trade in India. So Sharon, could you give us a bit of a summary of your experience of becoming an engineer and what made you want to train in this sector?
Thank you, Naomi, and thank you for having me here today. It was always an interesting career path because I did not start off my undergraduate thinking, yes, I want to be a transport planner. So I did organically fall into transport planning. So I started off by always having a bit of a curiosity around how things worked, why things were the way they were. So the curiosity that I had was coupled with the fact that I had interests in science, math, and understanding of how things worked. So when I went to do my initial year of engineering, which was in India, and it's a 4-year engineering course, you spend your first year having a go at all the different disciplines of engineering. So that is electrical, mechanical, civil. And one of the things that really interested me was the civil side of things. So why things were built, and perhaps similar to Lucy, I was just always interested to see that, you know, you can see what you're doing on ground and or perhaps underground as well. So it was always a curiosity about why things were working the way they were. And when you start looking at these amazing bridges and the engineering technology behind, let's say, the London Underground, for instance, it was built in the 1800s, and how an amazing feat of engineering it was. It's always the curiosity of how things worked and why did they work the way they were. So I did my undergraduate in civil engineering, and I specialized in transport planning because that was the most interesting bit to me, and understanding how big transport networks were built and how it all just seamlessly fit in people's minds. And when you actually bring it on paper and when you bring it on ground, the amazing quality of building something that changes people's lives, that's what impacted me the most. And then was I finished my undergraduate, I went to work as a traffic engineer in the Middle East. So that was an eye-opening experience for me because I was working in a very different environment, and I was working for the projects that led to the Qatar Football World Cup, which is happening this year. So it's brilliant that, you know, the schemes that I've worked on, the junctions that I've designed are actually opening up this year, and people are actually using it to get to something as big as the World Cup games. So it is perhaps the impact of my work, which I believe is quite profound and quite different, and it makes such an impact on people's lives, and, you know, the way they access work, they access opportunity, the way their even lives change because of something as simple as a rail line. I mean, I can't say it's simple as a rail line, but still how much connectivity impacts different strands of the economy and the global environment we live in is profound. So that's what led me into engineering and how I ended up where I am.
Thank you very much. That's absolutely fascinating, and I think we'll come back later in our chat about the perspective of perhaps female engineers and what that brings to the way that we approach projects and delivery. Before we do that, I just was quite keen to talk a little bit more with you about your experiences to date, and particularly whether your gender has brought particular barriers or opportunities to your career, either now or in the build up to where you've got to. Lucy, shall I start with you?
Yeah, so I am currently positioned in an on-site environment. I have been since pretty much the day I joined the industry. So I would say, probably unlike a lot of design offices, we are really struggling to recruit individuals, and that's just because, as in, that's individuals of either ethnic minorities or I guess females as the underlying cause. And that's more, I think, because of what people perceive our industry to be, particularly on site. So I think a lot of individuals still believe we are a dusty, dirty, male-run industry. And while the male-run industry might still be true, we're nowhere near as bad as we were kind of 10, 20 years ago. And even in the 6 years that I've been here, you have seen a big shift. It's particularly in the number of female apprentices that we're bringing through. And that's a testament to showcasing the on-site conditions that we are. And there's a lot of innovation in construction, so a lot of precast innovation, concrete innovation that's actually becoming really appealing. And also the number of different job roles that you do. So I want to be on site with the individuals there, but there's a lot of other kind of background on-site roles, whether it be in commercial procurement, project management, which you're all based in the on-site cabins here. It's just you're not physically out on site. And I think we are slowly getting the message out that there is opportunities for people here that suit the needs and requirements and the wants of everybody. But it's just generally trying to showcase that, which I think is the biggest challenge, particularly for people that don't have any relationship to the industry, and that's whether their fathers or uncles or teachers have experienced the industry. For people that are so isolated, it's really difficult getting that message to them. In terms of, do I think that I've been treated differently or had opportunities raised? I think rightly or wrongly so, there might have been a slight positive discrimination in the terms of the opportunities that I've been handed because of my gender, and whether that's because we want to be showcasing that there are females within the industry and providing role models, that's a different question to be had altogether. And I'm thankful for those opportunities. I don't necessarily agree that it's the right way going forward once we have been able to showcase what we have. But for the time being, I think it's really important to provide role models, particularly for younger generations, and even older generations who want a career change, to show that it is possible to do it and enjoy it and love it. And quite frankly, I'm going out on site later on this afternoon and I'm excited for it because that's my day job. So I think, yeah.
Huge credit to you, Lucy, and Ing's Economic Heartland have worked with you before, is the amount of profile raising you do for the industry, and if one or two young women see the work that you've done and become inspired by you, then my goodness, that's an opportunity that we're glad to have taken. Sharon, just asking you a similar question. I mean, again, a different pathway that you have been on in terms of coming growing up, being educated in India to start with before you moved over to the UK. How about your experiences of training in engineering? Have you experienced any discrimination or opportunities because of your gender? Indeed, not just as you're educated, but also in the work that you've done going forward.
So one of the earliest things I picked up from when I was at university was how stereotypes play into people's decisions and making major decisions of their lives. So for instance, we had an mechanical engineering department, and there were about 2 women out of 120 men who signed up to the course, which is interesting because people's perception that mechanical engineering in this instance is very hands-on. You have to get your elbows, hands greased, you're working in between machines, which may not often be the case because we are in a world that is changing a lot, because even in civil engineering, even in the work that we do, there's been a shift towards data sciences, technology roles, things where you're having a huge impact on climate change, sustainability, behavioral sciences, even for us transport, because people change and the behaviors change, and the kind of roles that we need in this industry at this moment in time is perhaps a lot different to what it was 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, because you're looking at a very data-led future. So I think that the skills that people perhaps think that are required to be in an engineering role is a bit different to what your stereotypical normal thoughts would be, because you need to be great at communication. It's very important to see how much of projects and teams all build on communication. So the fact that women are great at communication often and are good at collaborating is very essential for engineering projects to go forward. Similarly with behavioral sciences, you're looking at very different ways of how people travel, especially with COVID. There's loads of impacts on the way we perceive transport, the way we plan for networks of the future. So I think the skill sets that are essential for engineering is different, and perhaps is growing to be a lot more inclusive. So I'm sure there is a lot more opportunity for women to forget that it is, it's a bit more than just getting your hands dirty with maths and science. So I think that is the key message that would need to be going forward if we are to invite a lot more diverse entrants into the world of engineering.
Absolutely, and I think just coming on to that, and Lucy, building on your experience from the civil engineering perspective, what do you think a more diverse workforce brings in terms of both skills and perspectives? The theme for this year's Women in Engineering Day is inventors and innovators. So I think in the context of that, what do you think more diverse workforce brings?
I think, or certainly I have definitely learned on site that different genders, if we were to stereotype, and I'm not saying it's on an individual basis, but if we were to stereotype, different genders bring different methods of planning and undertaking works, with perhaps a different view on how we go to work or how we view health and safety compared to getting the job done, to planning and tackling problems. Like a more diverse team with a more diverse background will give more opportunities to discussion for different ways in which we can undertake a task more efficiently, more effectively, more cost efficient, more program certain. And I think it's really important that we start amalgamating those different backgrounds, and that's not just different genders, that's different ethnicities, and even looking at the kind of minority groups, so disabilities as well. There's a lot of things that we miss as a function in terms of being able to access, because we don't have those people with the backgrounds. And I think that's really important, that actually going forward we need to start changing and becoming diverse teams, because we are learning that to get a task done more effectively and efficiently and to suit a much wider pool of people in order to kind of deliver the top quality and class that we want, we need to start at the beginning, and that beginning is the planning and the delivery teams, as silly as it sounds. So yeah, I think we do need to get there, is your answer, and we are slowly making progress. I've stopped being maybe the only female in the office on night shifts, and there's now 2-3 of us, and that's really nice to see. But it's also nice to bring, we have very similar views because we are all very young apprentice, just graduated type engineers, and we're talking to people who have 50-60 years in the experience in the industry, even because they started when they were 14 or 16, and you're amalgamating kind of what we're learning and experiencing to their kind of experience and how they've done it for the last few years, and that's really powerful.
Absolutely, and I think just in terms of that, Sharon, how do you think we can attract more women into engineering as one of those underrepresented groups, and particularly in the context of this discussion?
So I think one of the first and most important ways of doing this is breaking down those stereotypes. So I can't emphasize enough how much of a barrier it is often to people making that first step, because if you don't make that first step, you're forever perhaps missing out. And even maybe later in your careers, you don't have to be a young engineer, you can still come back to the profession at any point in your career. So I think breaking down stereotypes is perhaps the most important thing. And number two would be the importance of role models. So I think the pipeline towards the senior leadership roles are often narrower for women and people of ethnic minorities, and we need to change that. And there is a lot of skill out there, because there is often a misunderstanding that we're just lacking skills. I think we need to broaden our pool of candidates, because we can't really focus on this particular person who has done this particular degree, who has done 1 A level in maths or something like that. it is a broader pool of candidates we require, because the industry is changing, the type of work we do are different, and one of the ways is of course apprenticeships, because in this day and age of very expensive university fees, why would you not want to be an apprenticeship? Because you get a lot of experience, you're in the industry way ahead, and you are getting upper hand perhaps to most of the people coming out of university, because you'll need to train again outside your first degree. So finally, my fourth point would be, I know we touched on this earlier, but we need a positive enforcement about skills that are diverse. So things might not be exactly the same as it is at the moment. So perhaps the diversity of thought is essential in every part of the project planning. So be it project planning, design, if we do something differently, can we take a risk? That'd be great if we did take a risk. So I think finally my point is around experimentation and giving it a chance. That's what I would call it. Giving people a chance, giving people the opportunity. And if you don't give that opportunity, there's always a gap about, or what if we had somebody else in here who thought differently, and we could have had a different project and we could have a different solution. So these are my top 5 points about why I think, and how we can start attracting a lot more women, especially ethnic minority women, into engineering.
Absolutely. And Lucy, just building on Sharon's point about kind of thinking differently and bringing in those new ideas, how do you think we can better access and encourage young women who are thinking about their A-levels or their degree apprenticeships or their degree courses to actually think about engineering? What are the 1 or 2 things that you think we can do more of to really steer them towards this opportunity?
Yeah, so I probably would go back even further from kind of A-levels in school. So I think that, as you said, we have a genuine like 20% trend of females taking up physics, and that hasn't changed for years. So why hasn't that changed? And quite frankly, I think we need to go all the way back to kind of your primary school and your really lower years to demonstrate that actually it's fine to play with Lego, it's fine to be interested in construction, and it's fine to want to do the things that the boys in school are doing. And I think that's a really powerful message. Like, we need to start targeting the young years so that by the time they've got to secondary school, we haven't lost that large pool of individuals we did have access to. And whether that's companies going in and giving them fun activities to do based around construction, or assemblies, but light-hearted assemblies, to generally give them a feel of what kind of STEM involves. And generally, like, children want to be involved, they have creative minds, they're innovative, and that's something we actually lose kind of going to secondary school when our lateral thinking starts becoming much greater. And I think it's a shame that we lose that, but I think we should be tapping into that at primary school. So I think that's where our target should be at the minute, because we need to stop losing that big pool that we are. I think in secondary schools we need to do, or as a generalization, companies do start getting involved with schools at a much wider level, because you will find that from school to school, normally there's a trend on the Ofsted rating of that school of how much kind of extracurricular STEM based activities they offer or bring companies into. So we need to start kind of targeting the nation on that, and whether that's making it, I guess, having companies involved within a certain mile radius with the education, and building those partnerships and giving individuals opportunities to come and do work experience, because actually that's something that can be really difficult if you don't know people in the industry. And then I think there's a role the industry needs to play. So the industry needs to show that we are appealing to those individuals. We need to show that we are adapting to everyday life. So just don't want to touch on it too much, but looking at COVID and how a lot of us have gone to work and proven that we can work from home to suit the lifestyles that we now live compared to what we did in kind of the early 2000s. Well, I think that the industry needs to be shifting and showing that we can do that, and also showing that we have females in powerful and dominating positions just as much as males do. And as Sharon said, really tapping into having role models at all levels, whether it be apprenticeships, kind of mid-careers, or leadership roles, to demonstrate that there is something for everybody.
Absolutely. And just as we look towards International Women in Engineering Day on the 23rd of June, as three women in transport, what do you both think the one or two things that we should do on the 23rd of June should be? Just one or two things. If we did nothing else, what should we do on that day to spread the message?
So
Sharon,
I think,
I'll let you. Oh, Lucy, go first.
Sorry.
No, go for it, Lucy.
No, so it's something actually we are doing at East West Rail, and we're being actively encouraged. But all of us are going to make a pledge about how we want to encourage females or help courage, and whether that is dads bring their daughters to work when they're old enough to do that, whether that's getting involved with your local community and showcasing that, whether that's as a project. We do a lot of work with schools, whether it's the individuals that haven't yet done that, doing that. So I think, me personally, I want to, well, it's my ambition to go into a school and find somebody that doesn't know about construction and really start getting them to think that's what I want to do. Because normally when I go into schools, children already know about that. It's normally kind of the upper age groups when they've already decided what they want to go into university. So that's my pledge. But I think if everybody, no matter what gender, age or background you come from, can do that, I think we are halfway to actually making it, because having an ambitious target means that we might achieve half of what we want to, and that's half a step forward than we were before.
Fantastic answer, and you have inspired me to do a number of those things myself on the 23rd of June, but also just that one thing of going into my own children's school and using that platform to remind them of their responsibilities as a primary school as well as a mum. Sharon, just coming back to you, what's the one or two things that you think you're going to do on the 23rd of June to really promote International Women in Engineering Day and encourage women to and girls to get into the sector?
So the first thing I'm going to be doing is spreading the message. So we have quite a few events, and this is not just in Jacobs, but across the industry. So Women Engineering Society has quite a few events. So I would be spreading the message, which I think is important, because not many people know this day exists. It is out there. There is, there's some wisps of it, but perhaps it's not as wide as International Women's Day. So I think it is quite important to spread the message. So I will be continuing to do that. But also, more importantly, I will be looking to contribute to setting up STEM sessions. So similar to what Lucy said, we have a lot of STEM events happening at the moment. And also there is, interestingly, a lot of charities also that support women, especially young women who want to get into interview roles, giving them the information on how to interview, because there is a big gap in the knowledge of how people interview, which I think is also one of the reasons why perhaps certain groups of people do not get into certain roles, is the stereotype that you need to interview in a very typical way as somebody from a very public school, because they have been given the training to say the right things, to do very good strengths-based, competency-based interviews. So I can't stress how important it is to guide students, especially young women, to give them the right skills to know how to do a good interview, to know how to bring out the best strengths from their experience and their skills. So those are the two things I'll be doing.
Absolutely, that is absolutely fantastic. We're just going into the last few moments of our interview, so I'm going to ask you 3 quick fire questions, and if you could give very quick answers before we wrap up. So first of all, Lucy, what is the best thing about your job?
The best thing about my job is seeing how you can make an impact with the teamwork and collaboration around you.
Fantastic. And Sharon?
Problem solving and trying to build the most inclusive transport network.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you. And Lucy, just coming back to you, where would you like to be in 5 years' time? And Sharon, I'll ask you the same.
I guess I would love to be still inspiring a future generation. I'd like to be in maybe a leadership role where I can offer technical expertise, but also be playing my part in helping to secure a future, particularly for construction and particularly for a diverse workforce.
And Sharon?
I'd say I would like to be a senior leader of a program delivering inclusive policy, because I think that is the undermining principle of how our transport network can truly be inclusive and fit for the 21st century. So I'd like to be a leader trying to deliver the right policy, strategy, and the programs so that we're looking towards a sustainable future for transport.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And finally, to you both, what does 2050 look like for the engineering sector? What would you like to see it looking like? Lucy, I'll start with you.
I would like to see an industry that has innovation at its core, that has a diverse workforce, still actively being encouraged, because by 2050, I don't think we will have a 50-50 split. I think that needs to be generational, as in we need to start changing the outside perspectives, but I think we can get much closer than we are now. And I think an industry that is pushing to be greener, but also encompassing collaboration, innovation, and kind of community as well, because I think that's something that the industry is maybe losing slightly.
Fantastic, thank you. And Sharon, for you, 2050?
Whilst it may be ambitious and hopeful for me to say that there will be equal parity, I perhaps are a bit apprehensive about it. But what I do know, for instance, is that we will be having a lot more diverse workforce, and that may be women, that may be ethnic minorities, because we need to be working towards an innovative group, making sure that we have an environment where the diversity of thought and a creative mindset are essential factors that makes us an industry move forward. So we don't want to be still building things, doing things that perhaps are not going to contribute the right outcomes to us as a society, and that, be it climate, be it localism, be it more shorter, quicker trips rather than very long distance trips. So I think the way we design things will change, because priorities have shifted ever since COVID, and ever since the fact that we've got a different ambition that is towards a greener future.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both very much for joining me this morning to have a conversation about International Women in Engineering Day. I think I will say that you're both such inspiring young women. It's a real privilege for us in England's Economic Heartland to have you working on projects that will deliver a really fantastic transport system for all of our communities in the future. And we're very proud to have you contributing to our work. And thank you both so much for everything you do, for inspiring more women in the future, and for contributing towards the transport system that we're all planning and delivering. Thank you.
Thank you.